Okay, so there's a lot of confusion. Well, basically, we're all under massive hypnosis, and I'm going to explain why. This channel is dedicated to Aboriginal culture, which is connected to ancient Moorish culture, and how that connects, if there is a connection, regarding America, Aboriginal America, and the Moors. Then I like to mention it here. Now, the thing is, a lot of people are confused when you mention the word Moor, or America, for that matter, and Africa and everything else, because we are under mass hypnosis. Now, the point of this is that we're trying to relate the past to modern maps, and it doesn't work, because the mass hypnosis that we're under is from these newer maps that we use, which were created recently and which are not accurate at all. And this is what this video is about. So let's just go into it.
Now folks, look at this map. According to your social studies teacher, what is the equator? An imaginary line where?
Yeah.
Around the center of the earth. Then if this map is correct, then the equator must be here, and Chicago has a tropical climate. Now folks, this is the map that we use in the schools. Look where the United States is, in the middle of the world, right? Now, here's the USSR, which is no more, of course, Mongolia, China, Africa, India, Pakistan, Afghanistan. Now look over here. USSR, Mongolia, China, India, Pakistan, Afghanistan. Two Indias here. We have two Indias. Did you know that? Now people, this is a flat-out lie. Look at the size of Greenland and the size of South America. According to your social studies teachers, what were continents? Largest land masses on the face of the earth, right? Now, do you know the continents? Africa, Asia, Australia, Antarctica, Europe, North America, and South America. Did I say Greenland? Well, Greenland isn't a continent, but it's a huge landmass according to this map, right? The map is a flat-out lie, people. If you read the legend on the map, here it says, in fact, South America is actually 9 times larger than Greenland. Now, look at this map. The equator on this map is down here. All the white countries are larger than they should be, and all the countries of people of color are smaller than they should be. This is a visual image that teaches children a lie. In order to make this map anywhere near accurate, you have to take this over here and put it here like this. Now, well, can somebody hold that? Can you hold that down there, somebody? Are you a somebody?
Sally is a somebody.
Okay, Sally's a somebody. There. Now, take a look at the difference. Does that give you a different visual image of the importance of the United States? People, the way you use things like this, teaching aids like this, are what make you and I racist. We were taught that this is the way the world looks. It's a flat-out lie. How could a parent not be a racist? How could a white parent not be a racist in a situation?
So, I start the...
All right, so that was a clip from the Oprah Winfrey Show. I just found it online. Here's another clip. This is actually from a television show, but it's relevant. I'm just going to play a part of it. I'll put all the links to everything I have in the description.
We'd like President Bartlett to aggressively support legislation that would make it mandatory for every public school in America to teach geography using the Peters projection map instead of the traditional Mercator.
Give me $200 and it's done. Really?
No. Why are we changing maps? Because, CJ, the Mercator projection has fostered European imperialist attitudes for centuries and created an ethnic bias against the Third World. Really?
The German cartographer, Mercator, originally...
Okay, first of all, she said the European put a bias against the Third World. Now, she just called the European the First World. So the First World is what Europe calls itself, the West. The Christian world is the First World. and everything else. Not even called second, because they don't really say a second world, even though they refer to them as the developing countries or the countries that are becoming more westernized, more European controlled, more Christian. So there's really the first world, the developing countries, and the third world. So not only is it just the map placement, but it's also the language that they use to put everything outside of Europe as subordinate, lesser. This is the mass hypnosis that we're under. This is why everyone wants to vacation in Europe. You know, oh, it seems much better in Europe, right? But let's go on.
Originally designed this map in 1569 as a navigational tool for European sailors. The map enlarges areas at the poles to create straight lines of constant bearing or geographic direction.
So it makes it easier to cross an ocean.
But
Yes.
it distorts the relative size of nations and continents.
Are you saying the map is wrong?
Oh dear, yes. Look at Greenland.
Okay.
Now look at Africa.
Okay.
The two land masses appear to be roughly the same size.
Yes.
It would blow your mind if I told you that Africa is in reality 14 times larger.
Yes.
Here we have Europe, drawn considerably larger than South America. When it's 6.9 million square miles, South America is almost double the size of Europe's 3.8 million.
Alaska appears 3 times as large as Mexico, when Mexico is larger by 0.1 million square miles.
Germany appears in the middle of the map when it's in the northernmost quarter of the Earth.
Wait. Relative size is one thing, but you're telling me that Germany isn't where we think it is?
Nothing's where you think it is.
Where is it?
Nothing is where you think it is. That's a serious statement. So we're trying to relate ourselves to a history, to a heritage, based on information that we received where we believe in a map where nothing is where we think it is. Do you understand that? How difficult that is? And why we all have this confusion and we're all arguing with each other about, oh, this is here and that is there. No, nothing is where we think it is. And I'm still saying that right now, as of now, even though I got more to show you.
I'm glad you asked. The Peters projection.
It has fidelity of axis.
Now, the Mercator is the map that we use. The Peters projection is the one that this one is talking about. I'm not even... No, clearly, I don't believe in the Peters projection either. But possibly there is something to the Peters projection, which is what they're going to mention.
Fidelity of position.
East-west lines are parallel and intersect north-south axes at right angles.
What the hell is that?
It's where you've been living this whole time. Should we continue?
Uh-huh.
So, you're probably wondering what all this has to do.
Okay, also I did look up the Peters projection, and apparently it was just an Arab child in a European school who it's a weird story and it doesn't make sense. it really doesn't make sense from what the history of the Peters projection that I looked up. It just seems to be one of those things someone just put together, and it stuck.
With social equality.
No, I'm wondering where France really is.
Guys, we want to thank you very much for coming in.
Hang on, we're going to finish this.
What do maps have to do with social equality?
But I would say one thing regarding Europe is that she just mentioned how the largest land masses are continents. Europe is not a continent. It's not a large landmass. It's a small landmass connected to a continent. Europe is actually Asia. The continent is Asia. Europe is a few countries who's declaring themselves separate from the rest of Asia. So when we talk about the division, we talk about the West versus the East, the first world versus the third world, the Christian world versus the Islamic world. We talk about Europeans versus Asiatics. But the truth is, the Europeans are Asiatics.
You asked or she asked? Salvatore Natoli of the National Council for Social Studies argues, in our society we unconsciously equate size with importance and even power.
I'm going to check in on Tubman.
Go.
These guys find breaking in on that map, you'll call me, right?
Probably not.
Okay. When third world countries are misrepresented, they're likely to be valued less. When Mercator maps exaggerate the importance of Western civilization, when the top of the map is given to the Northern Hemisphere, and the bottom is given to the Southern, then people will tend to adopt top and bottom attitudes.
But wait, where else could you put the Northern Hemisphere but on the top?
On the bottom.
How?
Like this.
Yeah, but you can't do that.
Why not?
Because it's freaking me out.
Like this.
So they're saying that that's the actual Peterson projection of the world. Now, if you notice, this is still a flat map, and the sides are not connected. So let's move on. A few things I want to note is this Daily Mail UK.co.uk science tech article. Dated, where's it dated? May 7, 2004. It says, while every map you're looking at is wrong, Africa, China, and India are distorted despite access to accurate satellite data. So they're saying that they get the satellites, they have the data, but they still are distorting it. So we are not seeing the reality of what it is. It says the distortion is a result of the Mercator map, which was created in 1596 to help sailors navigate the world, which, whatever. It gives the right shapes of the countries, but at the cost of distorting size in favor of wealthy lands to the north of Europe. All right, so, and there we go. A depiction of the Henricus Martellis. It is said that Columbus used this map, oh goodness, it got a lot of ads on this page, to persuade Ferdinand of Aragon and Isabella of Castile to support him. So this is another depiction. I guess that's Europe, it goes Italy, Africa, well, this is Asia, Africa, but it shows Africa is actually a lot thinner. Someone mentioned that before to me. It says Mercator gives a projection of the right shapes, but at the cost of distorting their size. In reality, Africa is larger than both. It says North America looks at least as big, if not slightly larger than Africa, and Greenland also looks comparable in size. In fact, Africa is larger than both. In fact, you can fit both North America into Africa and still have space for India, Argentina, Tanzania, and some leftover, notes Mr. Wan. All right. As we said that already, here's another globe. The Chinese globe was made for the Chinese emperor in 1623. The critics exaggerated the size of China and placed it in the middle of the world, otherwise consistently mainly smaller offshore lands. So apparently it's not just, oh, notice here, there's a lot more water in between. or on the continent, there's a lot more water in the middle there, a lot less land. All right, so this is not just to Europe. It sees China and other countries have been doing the same thing. Propaganda of their country to make their people feel greater than everybody else, to make them stay, I guess. Don't go outside your land because our land is the best. And this is the biggest. It says the Warner heart-shaped object of the world left. The fact that our maps typically put north at the top is a mere convention, but it has been accepted as correct in most part of the world. Pictured on the right is the Mercator map turned on its head, and they flipped it upside down. This heart-shaped map. Now, this heart-shaped map does something that the next few maps I'm going to show you does. It shows you how North America is in relation to Europe. So when they talk about Columbus sailing across, it seems that it would have been a lot easier just to sail down. But we'll see that as we go on. There's some more maps here, but it looks like it's mainly focusing on China, who had the same problem. Now, what I want to do is look up ocean current map, right? And I was going to put that over here for now. Let's go this article at BBC News. India to ban unofficial maps and satellite photos. May 12, 2016. It says India is introducing legislation to ban maps or satellite images of the country unless they are approved by the government. The new bill, which would affect digital maps from Google, Apple, and Uber, is facing stiff opposition from campaign groups. It also bans wrong information, quote unquote, wrong information, including disputed international borders. The government said the rules will not create barriers to business if the bills came into law. The bill bans all types of geospatial information, maps, raw data, photographs acquired by any means, including satellite photography. So India is putting the kibosh, I don't know why I just said that, but India is blocking those major map apps for their depiction of what the map looks like because they don't agree. Maybe they don't want their country to know, or maybe they believe it's wrong. There's more reasons why I'm going to put the maps in the description, but here we are using Google and we believe it is law, but if you take the GPS and drive down from one location to another, that you may encounter a lot of wrongs. So if we can say on a small scale it is wrong, then maybe those wrongs add up to a much larger wrong. Let's think of it that way. But here's an Ottoman map dated 1803, which is fairly new. But the Ottoman map by Raf Effendi, Bisir Osmanli, Haritasi, I don't know. I'll put the link in the description. It's just an interesting map. And I'm not going to get it, am I? Because I don't have a Pinterest account. But let's see if this one. Yeah, let's see if this one opens up for me. Larger. There we go. It's an Arabic map dated 1803. I'm not sure if that's the accurate date or the date it was published. But this is looking from the North Pole and the South Pole. And as I mentioned before, if you look at the ocean currents, I say this a lot, how Christopher Columbus was not the first to sail the world, maybe the first of Europe, or quote unquote what they call Europe today, before it got established, but Aboriginal people, indigenous people of the world, and their canoes have been sailing the world. And of course, the Arabic world and the Asian, the Mongols and so on have been traveling the world for ages. But just the regular indigenous people have been, and they're doing so by the ocean currents. The currents, the tides of the currents during which they travel correlates with the moon energy. The ball, the earth, the moon, they're just magnets. We have iron in our blood. That's why we stick to the ball, magnetic ball, or whatever it is. But the moon affects the currents. Different type of constellations, different types of year. They move in certain directions. And this is what the totem poles and the shields and the dances were all about, teaching the constellations. And we knew when certain celestial events would occur and what areas it was best to see, and we would travel to certain islands or certain parts of the world to for festivals to celebrate these events, and we're traveling by the ocean current. Now, if you see, here's is Europe. To come across from here to here, or wherever, take 3 months, is what they say, on a steam-powered or an engine-based boat. But to ride in a canoe on the currents, that same trip would take 3 weeks or less. You see the ocean currents, the wind currents, just get in a canoe, pedal out, and ride it, and they would go from landmass to landmass. Now, that means that you're not going to make the trip whenever you want to do it. You make the trip when the tide is going in the right direction. And that's how we traveled. Before commerce was the religion of the world. All right? But like I said, it correlates with this map showing the poles, because here you have, everybody said the West Africa is connected to North America, but if you see from here, New York is connected to, what did they say? New York was connected to Ireland, I believe. They show that the same rock formation in Ireland was the same, looked like it was torn off from the rocks in Staten Island, I think it was, or upstate New York or something nonsense like that. But if you take in the ocean currents, you'll see that the currents will flow north to what is now called Europe, or to the British Isles, and then down to Africa, and then you can get that current back down to the Caribbean and back up. See that current? That current. So if I wanted to get to the British Isles from New York, it will take me north. not west. It will take me north to get there, and then come down south and bring me back down to the islands, to Florida, back up to New York. See how that? And then what also shows the depiction, like, here's Russia and Alaska, pretty much connected. Canada is not, it's mostly water. Greenland, really small, as we mentioned before. Africa is a larger mass. But then South America is pretty large too. Right, and there's the islands at the bottom. Alright, let's move on. This map says the same thing. What this is a newer map. This is a map of the undersea cables. Apparently, I think a lot of people believe that our internet is coming from satellites, when in fact telephone companies are running cables across the ocean. And this is one of the causes of the mass fish and bird death. You look up millions of fish dying. Well, these are electrified cables running across. What happens when the electricity hits the water? Maybe the bigger fish are getting tied up in these cables. Cables break. You know, but here it is. This is North America to Europe. And see how it's going north. Right? If I'm in Florida, I'm going north to New York, and the cables are heading north to Europe, not west. Matter of fact, on this projection, west from Florida is South America. You see how that works in when you're looking from the poles? We should spend more time in it. This is the Cassini projection. The Cassini projection. So we talked about the Mercator projection. We talked about the, what was the other one? The Peterson projection. And this is the Cassini projection. Reason I mentioned it, because it shows the poles. And we get this map from it, which not only shows the same thing, going north of New York, you'll get to the British Isles. The Greenland and Russia seem to be smaller. The quote-unquote European countries are smaller than the Mercator map. And South America is huge. In fact, it seems to be twice as large as Africa. And so is Mexico, and what they call Central America, which is North America, seems to be much larger. Matter of fact, I won't say it is the same as, it looks square foot wide, or square mile wise. It's close to North America. Interesting. We need to study this more and get more information on this. This is a 30-minute video, so I'm going to end this about here. Put all the links in the description. I want to follow up on this. We need to break the hypnosis, the mass spell that we're under. And it starts here. All right?